Welcome to Future Talks. Today we're here with Georgina Kyriakoudes from Aria Health, founder and CEO. And we're going to talk about how you transitioned into technology from a more traditional profession into accountancy, how you created Aria Health, that is an application for healthcare based on blockchain technology, and how you see the landscape of blockchain technology and markets in Cyprus and in the region in general. So let's start by meeting you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And let's go back and start with the first step of your careers and how you decided to transition into technology.
Yeah, so I started my career with PwC in London. I am British and moved to Cyprus a number of years ago. And I took a bit of an unusual route. So most people go to university, go to PwC, do their accounting. They take 2,000 PP graduates a year. I was one of the 30 non-graduates a year. So I started really excited to get into work and get into business. And at PwC, I specialized in the healthcare industry, learned a lot about pharmaceutical companies, health data, and how this industry works. When I moved to Cyprus after I finished my qualification, I worked with the University of Nicosia, originally within global training, which is the professional studies department. Yep. And that's where I really started transitioning into technology. So I started helping them with developing their online education platforms, specifically targeting accountants. Now, after a couple of years, we started to hear about blockchain, and we saw, and really it was more digital currencies then. And the University of Nicosia became the first university in the world to do a master's in digital currency.
And that was in 2013,
That must have been a little later, about 2015, I think it started.
Yeah.
And that sparked our interest, and we got a lot of questions from our clients saying, well, what does this mean for us, for accountants, for lawyers? Are we all going to start paying everything in crypto? And so we started looking at doing online seminars in this area. That then sparked my interest, and I got really excited, not just by the concept of blockchain, but by the concept of decentralization. And what does that mean? And how would that change the way we work? How would that change the way we make decisions? How could we automate procedures? And so I decided to do my master's in blockchain. And I went into it curious, excited. And when we got to the end stage and I was doing my thesis, I was working with a friend of mine. His name's Fadi. He's the co-founder of Aria Health. And we were sitting there saying, okay, what can we do this thesis in that's maybe a little bit different to the standard financial applications? We were looking at supply chain, many different areas. And then his wife was rushed into hospital. She was in agonizing pain. They didn't know what was wrong with her. And she was made to wait for more than 4 hours while they frantically searched for her medical information. You know, has she had a past surgery? Does she have allergies? And it ended up just by luck that a doctor that knew her came by, took her for an ultrasound and found that she had an ectopic pregnancy and was bleeding internally. Even then, they didn't have the details of her gynecologist on file. They had to literally, call him by the phone, even though she'd given birth in that hospital 2 years beforehand. He rushed in, took her through for surgery, and thankfully she was all right after losing 3 liters of blood. But that's kind of what then made us see, we have access to so much information, but not to our most important information, our health data. And at the same time, we have this amazing technology, which is all about giving ownership of information, security of information, and empowering people. And so that's what made me then say, you know what, I want to go the next step. I want to actually create my own company. I've learned all this amazing information and go into technology where we see, such a difference can be made in this world. And so then I did my thesis on the topic and continued on to move fully into tech.
That's actually a very awesome story and very inspiring of how it all happened together. So once you transitioned into the world of technology, did you go and start Aria directly, or did you start exploring about the blockchain technologies first, of how you could structure it or how you could deploy it? So what I'm asking, was Aria the first idea, or was it an evolution of the original idea, as it usually happens with startups?
Yeah, it's been a lot of evolutions and pivots. So originally, we actually went in saying, we don't need to build our own full solution. Let's go out and find who else in the world is doing something and let's bring it to Cyprus and let's
Yeah.
apply it. And so we just contacted sort of company after company, and that was the days of the ICO craze, and there are lots of people who just raised loads of money. So we thought, great, there's some fantastic people out there. And we went and spoke to them all, and none of them really were doing what we felt needed to be done.
Yeah.
None of them were really solving the problem of patient empowerment, of engaging people in their health data, of having high quality health data. So after that, we did our initial thesis, my master's thesis, where we spoke with the government and with hospitals and with doctors, and we did our research. Then we went and looked out onto the market and said, okay, what is there? Can we just use something ready-made? Realized we can't, and that's when then we started developing. And then over this period, and we started working with the American Medical Center, the American Heart Institute, Nicosia, that was our initial partner, and then we launched with the Year Polyclinic in Limassol. And bit by bit, we learned that health data is super important for us. I mean, we need it for our own health. But it's more than that. It's needed for responding to the pandemic. It's needed to develop personalized medicines. It's needed for drug discovery. It's needed for new AI applications. And that's where we really then started really bringing our mission bigger than just the patient, but having the patient be the driver for the whole healthcare world, and how we can actually help improve healthcare innovation at a much wider level, which is ultimately the basis of all innovation, is being able to get access to good quality data and making sure that the patients are the ones that are in control of who's accessing their data, why they're accessing it, knowing what it's being used for, and having like transparency and being rewarded for its being used. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned something very important, that you launched from Cyprus.
Yeah.
So what is it like to have Cyprus as your launch pad, especially in the area of blockchain and healthcare? I mean, you have YESI, you have resistance when it comes to blockchain. People think about it and they only think about cryptos. They don't think about blockchain as a data platform that distributes everything differently. So how is it like to have Cyprus as a launch pad in this area?
So it's an interesting sort of dichotomy. You have, in one sense, Cyprus is very innovative. I think there's a sort of entrepreneurial mindset here. People are curious about new technology. People are curious about new ideas. So when we first were mentioning blockchain, there was a lot of, we want to be involved in that. Yeah, we want to do that. Yeah, we heard about this. So that can get conversations started. But at the same time, there's this attitude of, yeah, we want blockchain, we love this, but we want to keep control of everything and make sure we keep everything boxed away, which is kind of the opposite of what blockchain is.
Yeah.
And so getting people through that education cycle of, yes, it's transparent. Yes, it's about sort of distributing control, but it doesn't mean it's less secure. In fact, it means it's more secure, and it doesn't mean that we're going to be taking power away from, let's say, hospitals or governments. And so it's a lot of that education. And yeah, you rightly mentioned that crypto can put a negative spin on not a negative spin, but the wrong spin on what we're doing. Yeah. We're using a lot of the same principles. I mean, crypto is really just a matter of more secure, transparent management of finance data.
It's the same principle of ownership, the same way you can own crypto, you can own your own files when it comes to healthcare. So that's what blockchain is about, digital ownership and its verification. So yeah, so the hospitals, let's say you walk into a hospital and you talk to them about blockchain in Cyprus. Were they receptive? Did they welcome it? Were they willing to go through the experimentation?
So I kind of went through a similar cycle in each one. So it starts off with, this is interesting, would like to hear more.
Yeah.
Then they start describing it a bit, and then they get the lawyers involved, and we get a little nervous of, can we do this as new technology? I've heard of crypto, and all that. And then once we get through the explanation, and I think this is actually what was key to us getting in, is once they understand that you are sharing data to the patient. You're not sharing data to a startup that has a centralized database that's going to put it all, and I have to protect it and control it, and I can do what I want with it. You're actually having your patients request, and we have an app where they request, I want my data in my own private blockchain wallet. And they're the only ones that can access it, and they're the only ones that can use it.
Yep.
And that then changes the whole narrative, because now you're not sharing just data out, because that's what they're scared about. They're scared about sharing their data out to a company which can then go and do what it wants with it. But when you then look at like GDPR and the whole principles which they're trying to align with is the data is owned by the patient, and they actually want to start removing the responsibility from them deciding how this data moves to the patient, then it actually has the opposite effect. And suddenly they go, this is great. This solves a lot of our compliance issues. It solves a lot of our fears around, like, you know, if a doctor calls and says, can you send over that data? That's on them if they send it to the wrong person, if that was really allowed, can they get consent? Now they're saying, okay, patient, take your data, keep it private, keep it secure, it's your decision, you do what you want with it. And that's what really then sort of changed, let's say, the conversation points.
Yeah, and we certainly hope that the government and the legislators do understand the importance of that, because there was a legislation for blockchain, and unfortunately it was withdrawn, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to go on a short break, and when we're back, we're going to talk about scaling Aria in other countries, an award you recently won in Paris, and more. So we will be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Future Talks. In the first part here with Georgina, we talked about how Aria Health was launched, how Cyprus was the launchpad, how the idea came about, and now we're going to talk about scaling it. As I am aware, you're launching in other markets as well in the region and Europe. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so our next launch is within the UAE. So we have a big hospital partner that has more than 80 hospitals, 11 million patients in 3 different countries who we're launching with. We sort of really saw a great opportunity within the UAE to, mainly because of its tech readiness. So where we looked at other countries, like, for example, within Europe, we tend to have quite sort of legacy systems, and it can be quite hard to change the way that the health data is exchanged, and also the sort of bureaucracy and regulations around it. Whereas Dubai has this sort of opportunity to be innovative, and so that's why we're now scaling into them.
It's a fresh start. You just start from the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you decide to go to Dubai? Because I hear a lot of people, a lot of tech entrepreneurs like yourself, talking about Dubai. It's the talk of the town, if I may call it like that, these days.
So we started kind of from a position that we said, okay, where should we go? And we looked at different markets, and we went out to different events and conferences to sort of see how the different markets were. So, for example, went to Germany, you know, really interesting industry, but quite, complicated and bureaucratic. It was more, it came to us. We went to Dubai, we got approached by hospitals there. We even got approached by like the Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia. Like, you could see they were out, they were looking. And so in that sense, it kind of came to us in that we put ourselves in those positions, but they were ready, they were open. And so with just a few sort of events and presentations, suddenly we could see that just naturally the traction made sense to be there.
Yeah, that is very important actually, because whereas the Cypriot market was more reactive to it, so you went to them, and they had to study it and accept it and so forth, whereas in Saudi Arabia that you mentioned and the UAE, they came to you, so they are proactive about the whole blockchain thing.
Yeah.
So what is it like entering hospital there, let's say, or engaging with a client? Did you have less resistance? Was the market educated?
I think one thing that's interesting about that market is it is highly private sector.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, only the local Emiratis have access to the public health, and it's about 5% locals, 95% expats, at least in Dubai. And that actually changes the mindset a lot, because when you have private healthcare, they're always looking for new ways to innovate and to change and to bring something new to the patients, to have new opportunities. And so they tend to be a bit more forward thinking. We're seeing more that in the big healthcare groups that they're also having innovation departments. So we work, they have maybe 15 people dedicated to innovation and digital transformation. And so again, they're out there, they're looking, and they've already educated themselves on that. So I think that's what's really made the difference for us.
Yeah, and all of that led you to win the Viva Tech Award in Paris recently. Tell us more about that as well.
Yeah, so we were invited, actually very last minute, a couple of days before the pitch, to go to Paris, to Viva Tech. I think they had 150,000 people at this event. Elon Musk was there. It was quite an event. It was a great experience. And yes, there was a pitch competition there. We were up against some really, really great different Web3 startups and other startups. And yeah, we're proud to say that we won that. And the main reason that when we talked to, there were a lot of the big VCs were on the panel, like Plug and Play and Amnimoca Ventures and all these. And when we spoke to them afterwards, kind of why did they select us? The main thing they said is, we want to see blockchain in the mainstream. We want it to be used by day-to-day people for real use cases. I mean, NFTs and all this, they're great, and I think they're going to be very interesting. But I think we just present something that's very mainstream and makes sense, and something that makes sense from a consumer level, so individual people, you and I, to be able to have access to our data, but also now we're expanding more into the use cases of why that data is needed. So for scientific research, for AI platforms, we're looking more and more, we're now getting a lot of partners on that side. So it starts to be something that is very practical and makes sense for what is needed, and really starting to see the mainstream use of blockchain.
And as an entrepreneur and a technologist and a founder who's been into blockchain for all this journey and more, how do you see blockchain entering the mainstream?
So the movement of generative AI is actually really interesting and potentially very pivotal for blockchain. People understand AI better because it's like a sort of front-facing interface, something I can work with, I can see, whereas blockchain's a bit more of an infrastructure behind the scenes technology, which makes it harder for people to get the benefits. But when you think about what AI can do, what AI depends on is data and access to quality data and access to big data. It also requires to know that the provenance of that data, so where's that data come from, the integrity of that data that hasn't been manipulated. We want to make sure that, given that we move towards this world of AI, that our data is being protected, that our data is private and secure, and this is what blockchain does. And so I think this is going to be really interesting and pivotal to put those two pieces of technology together. Obviously, I'm a bit biased, but I feel that health data is one of those core data sets, which you can't just use, public data, any information. It's highly private, highly sensitive, needs to be managed. We need to make sure the quality is good. We need to make sure we know how the AI, machines are using it. We need to be able to validate them and see their path to confirm that their outputs are correct, because it could affect life and death. So I think these sort of overall changes in the technology scene are going to help bring up blockchain.
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe I'm biased as well, but I mean, since the volume of data we create and process is growing exponentially, and since right now we might as well have fake data through generative AI, having immutability of data, traceability, and all of that will be the most important time in history, in my humble opinion, when it comes to blockchain. So I absolutely agree. So coming to a conclusion, you're someone who switched their career path, you moved on to an emerging technology, you used Cyprus as your launchpad, you scaled abroad, you won a prestigious award, you were at the same place with Elon Musk. what advice would you give to other fellow entrepreneurs who are thinking of starting their own startup, especially if that is in the blockchain area?
So I definitely believe that, you know, it's just so exciting to create your own startup. It is something that is a passion project. It's something that will give you so much more than I think you often can get in a normal employment job, but it's also tough. You need to have a long-term view. You know, from the day I started this, I remember saying with my family, right, we have 5 years, we're not going to question what we're doing. We're just going to go. I mean, we'll question, we'll pivot, we'll change, but you're not going to stop and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I should go back, maybe I should get a job. You're just going to do it. At 5 years, we can sit and talk. And so I think that making sure you have that long view, we've got to keep going. You know, there's too many stories out there that it's an overnight success. It's an overnight success after the 3 years beforehand. Yeah. So I think knowing that it's a long journey and that making sure you're not just in it for a quick win is very important. Yeah. You know, don't be fooled by these quick wins. They will have a lot of work behind them. I think what would have helped me, you know, in hindsight, getting those mentors on board. Like, we've got some really good, like, global mentors now who really understand the industry is very important. At the same time, I think being naive is very important. Yep. Sometimes you need some naivety because that's how you challenge the status quo. I didn't have a massive healthcare background. I'd worked doing some auditing of healthcare backgrounds, but that allowed me to see it from a different point of view. Yep. So ultimately, I'd say jump in, know that it's going to be hard, make a good plan, really think it through, do as much sort of testing of the product before you spend a long time building, get people who have been in the industry to talk to them and test your ideas on. That is
actually very important, especially the naive part.
Yeah.
Because you don't start by playing by the rules. Mm-hmm. You think differently. You think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Georgina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope to see more of Aria and more of blockchain soon. And I'm sure in Cyprus we have a large crowd supporting blockchain, which is growing, and we hope to see it in the mainstream as well. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us. We will see you at the next Future Talks.
Τώρα στην IKEA, κάθε σου αγορά με κάρτες της Ελληνικής Τράπεζας σε οδηγεί σε cashback στο Blair Rewards App. Κατέβασέ το τώρα.